Hey there, this is Nick, Remy, and we've invited Alex Hahn from Henry Schein. This is the Dentelligentsia Podcast. We are here to kind of talk about how we can help dentists make the best business decisions for their practice. And so, welcome, Alex. Great to see you.
Thanks, Nick and Remy, for having me. Looking forward to kicking off this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
I guess to start, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, who you are, and why you do what you do?
Awesome. Great question. So I've been with Schein. This is my 7th year, and I've been a field rep. I've been a regional manager leading teams. And now with my current seat, I'm been charged with reimagining what our customer experience looks like from a remote sales, virtual sales perspective for, really trying to think about what does the millennial technology driven dentist want from a distributor and as a business partner. So that's the team that we are building out right now. And we've gotten a lot of flexibility. We recognize that the market is changing very rapidly, as you both see. And the needs of dentists, while similar, continue to change and need to be elevated by technology and higher levels of support from all of their partners.
How, I guess there's a lot to really talk about, sounds like, because you have actually worn a lot of hats. I mean, you started out, you said, field service consultant, kind of worked your way through. You want to tell us more about that?
Sure. I think, there's a couple of things that really stand out in my personal journey. And I think the most important theme at Henry Schein and in my career has been, even though dental continues to be changed by DSOs and investment money and corporate dentistry, it's still always been a boutique relationship driven business. And we believe in that at Henry Schein. You hear our CEO Stan talk all the time about how in a technology driven world, we still want to be the company that has a human touch. And that's been the same for me in my career, is leveraging technology and tools to make customers feel enabled and supported in a speedy way. And in a way that makes them feel to the best of their ability that we are supporting them to actually run their business, not just as a commodity, a company that just puts things in a box and sends it to their offices.
Yeah, I mean, we recognize that human touch. We have a lot of relationships with, a number of the folks here, especially that are, focusing on southeastern Michigan, where our practice is, and we've built some strong relationships, and a lot of those we can feel, the relationships that they have with their clients, and so that's always, for us, we need to be able to build strong relationships also. And so it's cool to see that. And it certainly helps us when we make, when we have those situations arise. Talk to us more about that, this transition. I mean, certainly this new role is just starting, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We've moved very fast. We've stood up this team in about 2 months from the time that it was incepted until, we actually had folks in the role, which just started on Monday. We hired our initial 6. So this role is taking the same concept as a field sales consultant who's on the street, servicing clients. But we recognize that as the internet has really entered dentistry, there's far more options for dentists. And at Henry Schein, we have a couple theories. And one is that we either win or we learn. We don't believe that we lose. And what we've learned over the past couple of years is that while the new entrants have been really challenging for us, it's also been really helpful for clinicians and for dental offices, because they've brought in new technology and they've made access to other products more available. So really what we're aiming to do in this space is to learn from some of the things that our competition has done with technology and making things faster, easier to deal with, and really position ourselves as procurement experts. We know that we have the tools to support a private practice all the way up to, a national DSO. But I think what our opportunity here is really to rethink how we interact with our clients and learn from things that we've done in field sales, but also learn from all the technology that's out there to try to just create a faster, easier experience for the age of technology that we live in.
So do you envision this component of the business kind of, as a something inside the toolbox that the FSDs can use to service their clients, or this is a separate kind of component?
It's a separate and complementary channel. So we will always have our field sales team, but we recognize that not every customer wants that. I mean, we see that in the growth of some of just the online only companies. So our goal is always to have a solution for every customer and what they want and to meet them where they want to be. So our channel is really about, if you don't want a field sales rep, but you still want to use full service and you still want the scope of Henry Schein, then there's a virtual sales rep who can help you do that. If you want to just order on a website and you want kind of a lower touch model, then we have that too. And if you want true business consulting, hand-holding with somebody sitting down with you knee to knee and talking about practice analytics and building out a practice, then we have that too. So it's really just trying to make sure that we have the entire gamut of what any of our clients could want to meet them where they are.
We on a day-to-day basis, we're interacting with FSTs, and so you came from that part of the business, so we understand, or we feel like we understand that well. In your new role, are you chefing or quarterbacking, if you will, and do you have direct contact with the doctors? Are you just overseeing the virtual FSTs? How are you? What are you overseeing or managing exactly?
Yeah, great question. So the FSC role, being our historical quarterback of our customer interaction, is the field-based model. And this role that we've created is called an account executive. So it's similar in scope to being able to sell merchandise and consult on procurement. They can also consult and sell on software solutions, business solutions, and they can also consult and sell on equipment, small equipment, large equipment, practice transition, all of that sort of thing. So really it's just trying to mitigate some of the time that happens with the field sales approach, which if you are a field sales consultant and your customer wants to build out a practice, then usually there's, some drive time and you've got to set up some meetings. So I think some of the advantages of this model is really speed for our customers, in that we're going to be, we have a great platform that allows for calls, texts, and emails all in one place. So not only is our speed to answering going to be basically instantaneous, but also our ability to warm transfer people in on the spot will be far and away from what our legacy field sales experience is. And I think you both would recognize that in today's world, I mean, if you just look at Tesla, you don't have to go to a dealership. You don't have to sit there for 3 hours. You don't have to wait. You don't have to do all the paperwork. You go online, you put down your $1,000 and you get your car. And Amazon being the same kind of experience. So we're trying to put the customer experience at the center of everything that we do, and then build our teams around that so that speed is quick, experience is great. And hopefully along the line, we pick up some more customers that want to do business in that way.
That's a neat hybrid role. It sounds like you're getting the best of both worlds in your new position.
Well, certainly.
Hopefully there's an appetite for it.
Yeah.
Well, you'll be able to capture more business, because everybody has a little bit of a different preferences.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking about that, talk to us. I mean, as someone who's worn a lot of different hats, or all the hats, I guess, tell us some of your favorite client stories.
Oh, that's a good one. I think there's always big wins and small wins, and there's, really impactful moments in what you guys do and what we do and what clinicians do. But for me, it's always been the really small moments where you are sitting down with a customer and you're going through a practice analysis and you identify huge opportunities in their practice. And dentists don't necessarily get the business education in dental school that would allow them to recognize those on their own sometimes. So without having to go pay a consultant or go to a course, we've really integrated a lot of that. So my favorite moments have always been just sitting down with a customer over lunch or dinner, getting to know their practice, and really being the consultant that helps them game plan. How do you 1x, 2x, 3x your business? And a lot of the times for a dental office, it's not big change. It's how do we create a really good recall strategy? Or how do we identify if you're under capacity in the number of chairs that you have in order to service the active patient base that you have? Or what is the staff incentive sometimes to align around this? So it's always been the little tweaks, and I've always enjoyed consulting with customers in that way.
That's awesome. So as someone who's really been on the front lines and had to build those relationships and kind of you've kind of described a little bit about, how your process in helping to educate and be a team member with your client. What are the biggest mistakes that you typically see dentists making?
That's an excellent question. I think far and above from any of the practice analysis that we have done with customers, which is our kind of consulting tool that sets benchmarks and looks at their actuals to try to find areas of opportunity. The thing that I've seen in every single practice, every single time, is their hygiene recare. And there's a couple key statistics that every dentist should know around that. One, your active patient count is different from patient of record. So patient of record being every patient that's ever come through the practice that's in the practice management system. Whereas active patients, it ranges based on the consulting company you use, but it's usually patients who've had a procedure done in the last 18 to 24 months. And that's really your book of clients, is those live bodies. What we know through all of the work that we've done and all the companies that we've acquired is that when you have a strategic focus on making sure that your hygiene patients have their butt in a chair 2 times a year, that does wonders not only for production growth, but most importantly, patient retention. You would expect to see 10% attrition in active patients every year because patients move, patients pass away, patients change insurance, they get mad at you for whatever reason. That's just we all have churn, right? So the best way to combat that is to have a strategic, aligned focus with your entire staff around making sure that your recare list is full. And the most important reason it's that and not necessarily delivering implants or crowns is that there's a really important relationship between preventative production and restorative production. For every dollar you produce in hygiene, you typically will produce $3 in restorative. And that's because you're discovering treatment in preventative in the hygiene chair. So if you were to say increase patients by 15 in a month in your recare list, estimate that that's $100 in production. So there's $1,500 right there. But the most important number is all the treatment that you discover in hygiene, which is 3x of 1,500. And if you do that at scale consistently with your entire staff all the time, you can add 10, 15% to your production in a pretty easy way. It's a low energy lift. And unfortunately, most dentists aren't educated around that or given the tools to identify it, track it, and implement it. So that's really where we come in, is to show them that.
Well, is that a conversation like we're having here, an education moment, or is Henry Schein, is your technology contributing to that more passively in some integrated way, or both?
It's a mix of both. So it's of course opt-in because we would need access to their practice management software to harvest the data and identify it. And that usually starts with our Henry Schein practice analysis, which is our consulting baseline tool. But from there, we have a number of other tools. If you're familiar with dental intelligence, we have a software called Jarvis, which is our version of that. And that really allows us to take those insights we find from the practice analysis and identify who are the patients and create action plans from it to actually make it implementable. And then, of course, there's so many other ways. Like if you talk about our membership program and all the different tools that integrate that kind of technology to surface this to practices all the time, then, we think we have a really compelling business case for helping a practice grow.
Sure.
Well, I was going to add that what you just said, I think was really, it is really compelling and really interesting. And I certainly hope you guys can create a way to be able to convey that type of information that is really easy when you're in a one-on-one setting to kind of convey through this new
Medium. Yeah.
approach that you're creating here. So I guess this is a kind of a follow-up question, but it's really, and you can kind of use it to bridge the gap and talk about what you're doing going forward. But it's like, for any of us, what is one of the biggest things that are, your clients misunderstand about what you're doing, and or your profession as someone who's a consultant and servicing them.
Yeah. I think, there's a couple really interesting trends that are happening in dentistry right now. As, through COVID, there was, dentists didn't get a big raise from PPOs, which is, the predominant way that they, collect money in their practices. And as all of their overhead line items continue to increase and their reimbursements continue to be the same, it really forces them to look at their P&L and think about, how do I continue to support these 10 to 15 people that I have working for me, which is a hard challenge. And if you look at a P&L, you're going to try to see, where can I cut costs? Because that's the fastest way to keep your operating income high or in the black. And what we try to educate customers on is the trend of trying to cut supplies. At the end of the day, it's going to be a cost. You have to have them to produce dentistry. And there are certainly ways to be more effective in managing your spend, but what isn't necessarily the way to do it is to try to find a greater discount. And the reason I say that is, you can try to find a greater discount, or you can try to find more savings. So to give you an example, if you were to have a clinical person who is capable of producing revenue in the practice, and you task them with spending a few hours of their time that you're paying them for to scour the internet to try to find gloves from China, for instance, which we see a lot. Not only are you paying that staff member and redirecting their effort from a revenue driving activity to something that is a cost, it's also not the greatest use of anyone's time, because the maximum amount of savings that you could find is potentially 30%. 30% on an annual supply spend is normally very nominal in the average dental practice. Whereas getting more hygiene patients in the chair every month could be 10x your production, 10% increase on your production in a month. So I think there is not a fallacy, because there's always ways to save money on supplies and be more effective in that manner, but it's not necessarily the best way to practice prosperity.
We deal with this in our space also in a couple different ways, right? Where you're talking about revenue generating time, we operate with revenue generating space when we're looking at creating efficiencies in a new practice or an expansion relocation. And then we also deal with it, when it comes to this idea of doctors driving around looking for their own space, performing DIY real estate, where they're leaving a lot of money on the table by not having someone like us or someone else in real estate helping them, right? If they're not practicing dentistry, they're not making money. And so we understand that there's a lot of opportunity for us in our respective fields to create those efficiencies and ultimately impact their bottom line and their profitability. So We appreciate that very much.
People, they, when they find their way to us, they hire us to help them gather a lot of data. And they do that because they have a really expensive and, like the biggest business decision of their career. Do I relocate? Do I stay in place? Or if I move or I buy a building, is this the right location? Is this the right landlord? Is this the, all of these things. And so there's so many layers and there's so much information, and they're really scared because there's a lot of unknowns. And so, we like to kind of be that guide for them and help them, hold their hand through that process so that they can feel safe and secure knowing that they're getting the best information. And just, and so certainly I would imagine that you guys see that in your business all the time as well.
Yeah, I think we try to take the perspective of just trying to be educational at all times. Ultimately, if a customer finds that there's another solution that works better for them, then we just want to make sure that they have all the information to make an informed decision. And selfishly, I think that we have the best offering and, the best ways to help a practice. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they're small business owners, and they have to make the decision for them. So we just hope to be educating at all times. And if a partnership makes sense, then we're really willing to make that happen.
Obviously, I mean, so you started at Schein and 7 years ago, you said?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right out of college.
Right out of college. And so you've, I mean, you obviously had some great advice along the way to kind of take all these steps and kind of figure this out. And, what's special? What makes you feel inspired about what you do? And have you gotten any great advice along the way that's helped you on your journey?
I think I've been lucky in, timing and having support of, people that I've been able to stand on the shoulders of. But I think what's similar between the clinician and my experience has been the necessity to learn leadership. I don't believe that it's something you have or don't have. I think it's a skill that you practice, you research, you learn about. And some of the things that have really stood out to me from my mentors has been somebody very high up in Henry Schein, who I met a few years ago, and asked, what is important to you as a leader? And he had shared with me, if you just boil everything else away, it's about what you leave behind. And that's the people. It's how you support them. It's how you enable them. It's how you open doors for them. It's how you make them feel like they have a home at the company they're working at. And I have really done my very best to internalize that, and to not only on my own team, but on other teams, try to give my perspective and try to lift people up. And actually, a couple people on my new team are from those outside teams that I've been mentoring. And I also think the second thing that's most important in my journey has been listening. My mom was a salesperson. My mom has been my sales coach since I was born. And she always preaches to my brother two things. My brother and I, two things. One is, you have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. You need to use them proportionally. So I try to listen before I say anything. Not perfect, but I do my best to do that. And secondly, she had always preached to us that 10% of life is what happens to you, and 90% is how you respond to it. And that is really challenging in practice, but taking a beat, and even in the hardest of situations, not finding a silver lining, but trying to find the area of opportunity, has helped me differentiate myself internally and externally by being solution driven.
So that second point is worth talking more about, because you, in your 70 years, you've experienced 3 distinct phases, right? With pre-COVID, COVID, and post-COVID, what we're dealing with now. And they they've been distinctively different from one another. And I think the elephant in the room for me is always technology. So switching gears a bit, but touching on that idea about your mom's second piece of advice. What are you seeing with practices and doctors, and then relative to the phases of their careers, embracing it, being afraid of it, and then how it's helping or changing the landscape of the game here?
Mhm. I think the first thing that comes to mind is the digital workflow, which we've really kind of eclipsed the early adopter and kind of the adventurous type buyers, and we're really in the phase of mass adoption. I think that will, as insurance reimbursements continue to be the same or change very nominally, the case for making the patient experience in the same way that we're trying to think about our client experience faster, easier, through chairside dentistry or 3D printing or technology, I think is the biggest single opportunity in dentistry today. And I hope that we can deliver that to customers in a way that makes sense to them, because it will become very important and is very important to the sustainability of their P&L long term, is to be more efficient, and to create a patient experience that matches what we see when we shop on Amazon, or if we go to a One Medical or anything like that. So I think Henry Schein has to play a really critical role in delivering those solutions and creating those solutions for patients and clinicians.
I appreciate that. I mean, the rapid pace that things are changing is such that it is this game we're playing, pursuant to your mom's advice, where it's about how we respond and react, and just doing our best to keep up and, dare I say, get ahead of it. But it's one of the most fascinating parts of what we do, and the impact that it's had. So,
I flip it on you really quick. What are the trends you see from a technology perspective in your space?
Well, Nick led into this, cast by talking about how we're using AI to pull information from these interviews and create content, right? And that's a small example, and it's becoming a part of everything that we do in some small ways and other larger ways. So it's
Well, it's
yeah, go ahead,
certainly
Nick.
helping us because we're a small, we're essentially a small boutique, commercial real estate firm. There's three of us. Transactionally, we touch a lot of, we do a good amount of deals, but it helps us kind of spread our, being able to use some of these tools. It helps us to spread our message, which really, I mean, to touch on some of the things that you have said, it's really, we want to be relationship builders. We're part of this. We're part of a small community and a really interesting community full of really cool people that are doing really amazing things, helping people, right? And so we have to be creative. We have some listings. We don't really have very many listings. We're not like a Colliers or a CBRE where we have signed on every other building. And so we have to find creative ways to kind of get in front of people. And, a lot of our deal flow is from, word of mouth, or from, building relationships with people that are inside of this little ecosystem that we have. And we want to maximize that and be as good as we can, because there's a lot of information. And what we find is that, commercial real estate is really complicated. There's so many different things. Like in a commercial lease, there may be 50 or 60 different negotiable points between the business points and the legal points inside of a lease. And each of those points has their own story. And it's just not feasible for somebody to, pick up how do I do a commercial lease transaction type of thing, because we need so many people on our team. We need, multiple people, from Schein per se, just to help a relocation project or a startup. I mean, not to mention architect, contractor, potential civil engineer, real estate attorney, and the list, goes on and on and on and on. There's demographic people, there's all kinds of different folks, and our client is really important. We need to give them the best information so that they can really, take that and we'll help them kind of create a decision-making matrix so that they can really make the best decision at that time for their business. And so, any tool that we can use, that helps us kind of get that messaging out faster and better, we will adopt. So
I think that's the really interesting thing, right? Because we're all saying the same thing, which is that it's the relationship, it's the handshake, it's the lunch, it's getting to hear about a clinician's fears, wants, and dreams, and that will always be the core of it, or at least I believe that it will be. But the challenge for us in sort of a busy web environment is, how do you get the information to people? And it's going to be really interesting to see how technology helps us create an environment of education.
Yeah, I mean, really, at the core of it is that we're just unpaid consultants trying but it really is about education so much, in that we know that we will probably talk to 10 times as many dentists as we will probably transact with, and we want to still leave that situation, or leave that a little bit better than what we found it, so that they and maybe they're not ready to transact this year, but hopefully some of that that warm and fuzzy, or that information helps bring them back to us in the future. And so that's why we do what we do. And so we're deeply rooted in being giving.
Yeah. You got to give a little if you want a relationship. You got to be the one to start it, for sure.
Yeah,
that's right. So before we shift gears here and get into some of the fun topics we have planned, I've got one more in the technology realm for you, and this is a curveball because we didn't send this over to you in advance. But I think everyone watching, and certainly I'm wondering, we all know Jarvis is the artificial intelligence that manages Tony Stark's suit and world. So did the Marvel Cinematic Universe borrow Jarvis from Henry Schein, or the other way around?
That's a good question. And there's probably, I'd have to consult with the lawyers on that and Marvel, but say that,
you don't have to say anymore.
Going back to the win or learn thing, I think maybe we learned something from Marvel there.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Here, I thought it was the other way around, but that's fair enough.
Could be.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask Stan.
I appreciate that. Okay, so let's talk about some fun stuff here. Not that this hasn't been fun so far, but we are here to advocate for and service the dental community. That's why we're here talking about it. And it's always, we understand the value that we provide, and we hope that they do also, right? The doctors. So when it comes to getting feedback and compliments, can you talk to us about either a nice compliment, or the greatest compliment, or feedback that you've gotten that's that you've taken to heart and reminds you why we do what we do every day?
There's a situation that comes to mind pretty immediately where there was a customer that we had definitely made some mistakes in delivery of some equipment, and the doctor called me on my cell phone in my prior role and was definitely very disappointed. And we invited him to our branch and we sat down. We gathered our entire team, our entire local leadership team, and we talked it out. And at the end of it, we were giving hugs and, moving forward in a positive way where we were continuing the partnership even stronger than when it began. But I think a lot of the time the challenge is, frustration from clients comes from communication, and that's on us to own that. And it's usually miscommunication or, gaps in communication. So it's always really fun to be able to write a situation that is going south and turn it into a positive. Just going back to what my mom said, like, how do we go into this in a way that makes everyone feel supported and happy with, to your point earlier, what is the most expensive, scariest decision of a clinician's life, which is opening a practice and spending sometimes $1 million or more to make that happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's a great story for a lot of reasons, especially, the happy ending, because sometimes really what it takes is people, there's not much you can do ultimately when something bad happens or there wasn't strong communication. But I think our client and your client in that case just needed to be heard. They needed to be heard, and they wanted to know that you guys cared, because you do, and you do care. And obviously that's why, it wasn't, I'm sure nobody went into that meeting really excited, but they knew they were going to have to, express their compassion.
Solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think about your mom's advice again as you were sharing that, because I think, there's so many things in a project that can go wrong, and what a doctor does, when nothing goes wrong, it's smooth sailing. That the doctor's not aware of the various obstacles and challenges often that we face or could face. So when something does go wrong or awry, the most important thing we can do is be accountable and then remedy and make it right. And I agree. I mean, that can be as impactful as a project that has no hiccups or bumps whatsoever, right? And so we certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, not to talk too much about us, but our inside of our role, not that there's always some sort of fire to put out, because there's what we, in a perfect world, we would want to negotiate, have multiple options that were feasible for our client, and there's just so many steps along the way where there could be something that could go wrong. And that's one of the reasons why Remy and I work together and work together really well, is we try to be interchangeable. We want to give our clients, we're not always available, but we want to give them the opportunity to talk at a high level with somebody when they need it, because it's a really stressful time. And sometimes you just need to talk, and you need, because you have big decisions to make, and sometimes that happens after you put the kids to bed and you're 9:30, and you gotta make it happen. And we find ourselves on those kind of calls all the time.
Well, sometimes necessarily something hasn't even gone wrong. It's just, the anxiety starts to creep, and you've just got to be a sounding board for them and, reassure them that they've made the right decision, or help them get out of the decision that they've made if they really feel that it's not the right one.
That's right.
We've got to be neutral there and do what's best for them.
So does she do coaching for real estate agents?
I think my mom was such an interesting lady. She's been in mortgage sales her entire career, and also runs her own boutique specialty food business. So I've always looked up to her, because she's not only raised 2 kids and been an amazing wife, but also, been the breadwinner and also run her own business on the side. So I'm just trying to, measure up most of the time.
Obviously, we all need to eat, but I'm obsessed with food in so many ways. So what? Talk to us about what type of specialty foods, anything in particular, or
it's everything. Since I was 4 years old, she's had her own cooking show in Cincinnati on our local TV station. She's been this urban chef for my entire life. She's Uncle Martha Stewart. It's awesome.
Wow.
But in her mortgage sales, she really differentiated herself at the time by making custom drop-offs. And that was always food because that's her passion. And she started experimenting with spicy pineapple habanero jam, and she just nailed the recipe. And her customers started asking her to buy it because she would drop off one jar and they'd be like, I already ate it all and now I need more. And for years she was like, no, it's just something I do special for you. And then finally they wore her down, and now she's, in Meyer, and she's just, the jam lady. It's awesome.
So I'm going to shout out to my mom, who's from Puerto Rico, and we have a saying, "Panza llena, corazón contento," which means a full stomach equals a happy heart. So your mom clearly understood that, or understands that, and I wholeheartedly agree. It's true.
There's something special about just everybody sitting down for a home cooked meal every night. Yeah. I mean, that's the backbone of our family.
So speaking of moms and parents, this is always my favorite question. If asked, what would your parents say you do for a living? How would they describe what you do for work?
I hope they would say that I lead and enable people to be agents of change in their roles and at Henry Schein, and to imagine something that is maybe challenging, but ultimately will be worthwhile. Hopefully they would say that he helps people do the hard thing and encourages them to do the hard thing that actually is, better in the long run.
That's a beautiful sentiment. It sounds like they actually understand what you do then, because don't even ask me what my parents would say. I don't know what they would say. It would be a crapshoot. So that's a sweet sentiment.
Yeah. We'd have to ask them. I'm going to actually ask them today and see what they really say.
That's great. Well, we'll have to have you back at some point and get that answer.
Yeah.
So why don't you describe your perfect day for us? Or if you had one day left on Earth, what would you do?
Well, on the topic of food, it revolves around food. So, I mean, if it was in my perfect world, this is a Sunday, because I tend to do laundry and clean on Saturdays. So Sunday would be, hopefully there's a Formula One race. As you can see, I'm a huge Formula One guy. So hopefully there's a 9 a.m. race, and I've got IHOP DoorDash to my house with some orange juice to hopefully see Charles win. And then from there it would be going for a hike with my dog, and it would end with a really stiff dirty vodka martini and some sort of project cook, and then sitting by the campfire with a bunch of friends, and with a good bottle of bourbon. Because somebody once told me that bourbon is meant to be shared, and if you drink it alone, that's incorrect. And if you are sharing it, you have to finish the bottle. So
it's all good advice in my experience. That's all good advice.
Tough in practice, though.
Campfires are
fair enough.
Can't have too many campfires. That's for
so there's speaking of Formula One and racing, there's a store in Clawson called Leon and Lulu. They've got a bunch of curated home goods, furniture, fixtures, art, you name it. And there's a fantastic piece of art. It's a gigantic piece of wall art. It's all rusted metal. And where am I going with this, you asked? But there's a beautiful painting of a Formula One, or it's not Formula One, but it would have been race cars. What's that? There were race cars from ages ago, and it's historic, but it's on the rusted metal, and it's just a fantastic piece. And I said to my wife, this is a great looking piece of art. Let's do that. And she said, Remy, you don't even like cars and you know nothing about racing. And I said, yeah, I know, but it's really cool. And so that when I saw those, when we first jumped on, that was the first thing I thought about, was that really neat piece of art that's still there, just calling my name. So
She didn't let you get it.
not yet.
Beat you to it. You've piqued my interest. So
Yeah, well, I recommend that you check it out, because it's like, it's unique and it's in theme with what you have there in your wall. So
I'm gonna go scoop it up today. So you can have I'll send you a finder's fee.
fair enough. Fair enough.
What kind of dog do you have?
I have a purebred 99-pound German Shepherd who is just the biggest, not scary oaf. He's just a big lump. But I got him during COVID because when I moved to Michigan originally, I was in Chicago, which is where I spent about a decade, and didn't know anyone when I moved here to get into leadership. So he was really my buddy and my rock and my project while I was in the middle of COVID and couldn't make friends.
I love German Shepherds, and I named our firstborn daughter after a German Shepherd called Harper, who we would play with in Boston, where she was born. So, the name, the dog, the breed have a close place in my heart, no doubt.
They're so smart. It's wild. Like, mine can open doors. He can turn the alarm on. Sometimes I find him with the stove on. I swear when I leave, he talks. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's taking in the family business. He's maybe cooking, maybe making jam.
Yeah. There you go, Nick.
Oh, that's crazy. So, I mean, this one maybe doesn't hit as far home. You don't have to go back in time as long as some of the people we've talked to. But if you could go back and speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell them?
That's a really, I don't know that anyone's asked me that question before. Are you thinking in the realm of work or just in general?
Just life experience, whatever it is. I mean, the way that I answer that question really is that, I'm 46. I have really had one job in my adult life, which is commercial real estate, but I really bumbled my way through and started out in New York City and had to didn't really have a mentor. Just, I still knew it all, or I guess. But I made a lot of mistakes, but if I didn't have those those issues, I wouldn't be who I am, or I maybe would have a different worldview of what I have today. And so I really am content with what there's probably a few decisions I probably would have done differently, but generally speaking, I needed to learn for myself. I needed to figure life out. I needed to, but I'm someone who internalizes it. Takes, I'm not somebody who necessarily, I dive into things, and sometimes I do really well. Sometimes I fall flat on my face. At the end of the day, I learn from it and I get better. And so that's, to me, that's what life's about. And that's really the idea of the question, really, is to just say, hey, who are you? How'd you get here? And, if you have any great insight, let us know.
Yeah. It could be advice for your 16-year-old self. I don't know that the age is necessarily relevant. Just,
I think, I'll be 30 this year. So looking at my 20-year-old self is still bio pre-med in college. And I was having a lot of come to Jesus with myself, that I was just really more interested in the business of healthcare than I was about clinical healthcare. And, I'd taken the MCAT, I was applying to some med schools, and it was a giant moment for me to completely step away from what I've been trying to do for that decade of my life. And as I look back now, I think I would tell myself to trust your gut. And I know that's cliche, but just do ultimately what you think is going to make you as an individual feel fulfilled. Because there's so many things that pull us all in different directions that maybe aren't for us, but that decision was really about me long term and what I wanted to do. And that's served me pretty well so far.
That's a great answer. Anything else that you wanna shout out or just promote or talk about Schein or you?
I feel like this is at the end of the podcast. I should really have my own podcast or book or something to like plug. But all I could say is, if you are a clinician and you need support and consulting, or you want to streamline your procurement strategy, then Henry Schein is here to help you at no cost and give you the education that you need. And you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can search account executive on LinkedIn, or reach out to anyone at Henry Schein, and we can help you with anything that you need.
Alex, we love working with you and all of your colleagues, and we'll continue to look forward to working with you guys and getting you involved as much as we can, as often as we can. So,
ditto. Thank you so very much for having me. This has been a blast, and I hope that this podcast really takes off. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
We do too.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Alex. We're sticking around.